Hey, I'm Ted. Welcome to another schooly video. And I know you're not supposed to, but I did anyway. As you may have seen in the video, last weekend we went up and did some paddling on the Kennebec and Dead Rivers. It was a great weekend, great fall foliage, and we're coming home, and then usually on the way home we stop and fuel up, but we didn't. And you can see where this is going. It was a shorter trip than normal, and so I don't know, we just didn't. And then when we got home, I'd been kind of working on the bus, getting ready to paint. You can kind of see I was kind of working on getting the paint stuff going. And my daughter had a car wash for her dance studio, and like, oh, this is perfect. I said, we can bring the bus, and we can clean up all the stuff, all the crap from the dusting and the, from the sanding and things like that, and get a good sense about how much more I need to clean before we do the painting. So, we brought the bus to the car wash, and it was wonderful. The kids were, having a great time washing the bus, and dads were asking kind of, oh, geez, what do you got inside there? And moms were asking, oh, where'd you go with the bus? And so it was a pretty big event, and it was pretty fun anyway. And so we're heading home, and all of a sudden climbing up this hill, didn't quite have the power that we normally do. And I thought, this is odd. And then all of a sudden I realized, yeah, we never got fuel. And even though it was shorter, we'd gone a bunch of little side trips, things like that. And of course, the gas gauge doesn't currently work as well as it should. It's just out of adjustment. It kind of goes way up here, and so when it comes down to empty, it reads full, but it's really not. And I knew better. And you're never supposed to run out of fuel in a diesel. And I knew that because in college, one of my roommates said, yeah, I got busted one time. In high school, I'd come home late after curfew and told my dad, yeah, I ran out of fuel, and I had to wait for someone to come and fill me up. And his dad's like, yeah, no, it's a diesel. You wouldn't have got that thing going. You didn't run out of fuel. So you have to bleed all the airlines. I'm like, oh, no. So, I parked right in front of this, main old, good old redneck house. You can always tell them because there's like a whole bunch of stuff outside, kind of like my house. We like to, I suppose we don't have a monopoly on frugality in the country, but we definitely tried to, pull everything as much as we can out of everything. So, can't say he had the camper that we had pulling apart with all the pieces out of it, like I did with the bus to get all the components. And so he comes out and said, you run out of fuel? I said, what happened? I was like, I think I ran out of fuel. So he's like, oh, I got some extra here in this tank. I was like, no, I'll call my lovely bride. So of course there's no cell phone coverage up there, and I walked down the road a couple hundred yards, called Julie, and to her credit, she didn't call me an idiot like I deserved. And she said, yeah, I'll come over with some fuel. So she gets there, and we pour 5 gallons in and try to prime it. And I'll kind of show you in a second. The button where it's supposed to prime, sort of primed it, turned it over, didn't do anything. And we're thinking, well, maybe we need more fuel than just 5 gallons. So we brought Katie home, and then went and got a bunch of fuel. And then John there, the guy that I parked the bus in front of his house, he's like, well, I got all these extra tanks, would you take those and fill up? So this is, again, another just great example of kindness out of people. There is, we're in a current state of the country. We're always worried about people being mean and yelling at each other, but the reality is there's a lot of really nice people out there. And John was certainly one of them. Gave us all the tanks. And of course, the other thing, too, is I hate those little environmental nozzle things you got to push at the end of the gas tanks because, and then the way the gas tank is, here, I'll show you. This gas tank tucked way under, right up under that, when the funnel comes out, it's sort of at a, when the funnel comes out, it's an odd angle, and when you try to pour fuel into it, here it just sort of spatters back out on the ground. So that's an issue. So we're there trying to, jockey fuel by pushing that little nozzle on the end of that. Whoever did those environmental tanks ought to have to be sentenced to listen to Miley Cyrus for like 30 seconds, I think. But anyway, so we went and got we got a bunch of new tanks of diesel fuel came back, and John had found this length of hose we could attach to the bottom of the funnel, and we just took the nozzles right off and poured it right in there, and it went a lot better. So we're feeling a little bit more optimistic. We got a ton of fuel in there, went and primed it again, still nothing. So this is, I'm starting to feel discouraged at this point. So I know we're supposed to bleed the injectors and things like that, but I'm a carpenter, I'm not a mechanic. I can maybe change oil and do things like that, so I didn't really know what to do. I don't even know where the injectors are in here. Seems like here's the fuel rail, I kind of know that much, but then it kind of tucks in behind this thing, like hidden away like Klingon vital organs, and I couldn't seem to get to any of that at all. So I tried loosening this, and this is the priming. You hit this thing to prime that. You pump it up and down, that Bosch, but it didn't seem to really be getting any stiffer. And then this right here, got this little rubber nozzle on it, and if you take that off, I couldn't figure out, like it doesn't push in, and I couldn't figure out how to bleed it. And come to find out, there's a little tiny knob on the end of it, not even a knob, but it's this little indent, and you can get a screwdriver and push that in. That helps bleed it. But nothing was working. I was trying to crack these fuel things, and I'd get a little bit of air coming out of it, but I couldn't get the bus to start. So things are starting to get a little depressing at this point, because I'm imagining, we do have AAA, big RV coverage on it, because we're going to break down. We just always do. And but I didn't like the idea of having to use it already, and then of course you have to go to tow it to our mechanic, who's a great guy, but again, I prefer to keep money than give it to him, even though he's still a good guy. And then to be without the bus to work on it for 3 days. And again, I'm trying to get things painted and in good shape before snow starts flying. So, but we at this point didn't really have much of an option, I thought. So, Julie kind of gets in the car and has to drive down the road in order to get cell phone coverage to make all these calls. And in the meantime, I'm still sort of poking around the engine, trying to bleed things and trying to figure out what's going on. And John says, well, with a Kubota, sometimes I just got to keep cranking it. And so I disconnected the house battery that I had inside, because it's just a regular marine deep cycle. I'm not too fancy with their full deep cycle batteries. And I ran that into, hooked that up with my other battery so it'd have some extra power, and then cranked it for like, probably 30, 45 seconds. And all of a sudden it sounded different. It almost sounded like when you let off the key, it almost felt like it was still cranking. So I was like, oh, this is weird. And the starter gets stuck or everything, because when I'd rev it, it wouldn't actually, wouldn't rev up. You just put your foot on the gas. I was like, well, maybe it's kind of running. So I just kind of let it go for a while, and it was sort of unresponsive. But then it seemed to get a little better. I'm like, oh, okay, I think we got it. So Julie showed back up, and I went over, hey, cancel AAA. Go, everything's good. We're good to go. And so, thanks to John. Here's the tanks. What kind of pie do you like? We'd like to drop you off some pie for helping us out. It was kind of wonderful. And so, but good. We get everything set. I get on the bus, put it in gear, goes nowhere, and then try to accelerate a little bit, and it just dies, and crestfallen again. And I can kind of start it, but then it just wouldn't run. And at this point, it had been running for like 10 or 15 minutes, so I figured it's got to be something different than just, I think air would have purged out of there by now. And so, we kind of go back to AAA, back to the mechanic. Julie's texting away, like, flinging alphabet characters through the Ethernet. And then we figured we got to go. And at this point, I'm still trying. And then all of a sudden, big, puffy white smoke everywhere. I'm like, oh no, this can't be good. But all of a sudden it started to clear up a little bit, and then the engine started running, and I could accelerate, and I guess finally it just sort of purged itself. So cancel AAA again, call the mechanic, no, we're good to go, and double check with John. And so it was sort of, the other thing I forgot. So one of the things we did too is that, looking at changing the fuel filter, which I haven't done yet because I was up north all summer, and the last thing I want to do is have the bus stuck up there. Took the fuel filter off, and it was about half empty. So I filled that with fuel and put it back on. And so that seemed to help get the bus running. However, so I get back home, and now I have reliable internet connection. And so I want to figure out kind of what's going on. So did some researching and figure out that Schrader valve, kind of like a tire valve or a bike tire. And I thought maybe you can kind of bleed that there. But there's some sort of debate about that online. Like some people say it's sort of you can kind of do it, but or some people, it's actually, I guess, used to check your fuel pressure. You put a gauge on that or check your fuel pressure. Some people say that you can actually hook it up to a compressor with some low pressure and force fuel for the system. And then other people say, no, it's a dumb idea. You're just putting more air into it. So I don't know what the right answer is. But the other thing that I found that was a little bit frightening is there are some mechanics out there that say that they're internationally trained, and they say the international protocol is to never put fuel, unfiltered fuel in that. So pouring fuel into the fuel filter is a bad idea. And it seems like, and talk about all the videos about how to change a fuel filter, almost everybody says fill it up with fuel before you put it in, so it's less priming you have to do. The problem is, the guy says that the injectors in these DT46s have very tight tolerances on the injectors. So if any little bit of pieces of dirt get in there, it sort of messes up those injectors. And that was cause for concern, since those injectors were like $200 a piece. And so like, oh boy. So I'm hoping I really didn't sort of screw up the injectors. It seems to be running fine since then, but it's definitely going to give me some more pause about and more research about figuring out, I really need to change this fuel filter at some point soon. but I'm to figure out really the best way to bleed this correctly, so I don't screw up the injectors and crank away. But so that was my thing that I did that I shouldn't do, and I'll never do again. I don't know if I'll actually get that fuel gauge fixed at some point. Probably should, but it's kind of low on the priority list right now. I just got to make sure that I fill it up whenever I can. So hopefully that is a some lesson for you, or some help for you guys out there. Definitely check your fuel. Even though I know better, that's just me. Sometimes I know better and I just do them anyway. It's a character flaw. So, but that's how you can, on this DT46 2003. That's where the bleeder valves are, and seriously consider whether you want to fill up your fuel filter or not, based on that, or if you can find a way to find filtered fuel. So, hey, thanks for checking in. Coming up soon is the paint. Working on that today. Again, it's dewy and kind of wet out this morning, so I'm just kind of waiting for things to dry before I can let the paint fly. So, but stay tuned to that video. Hey, thanks for checking in. Like, subscribe, do all those things you do. Appreciate your support. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.